So I'm doing a little video to try to kind of explain a little bit what the concept is that I tried to do. I was originally going to use trying to use some biomimicry to copy the pulley systems of the flexor tendons of the hand, but this leather is actually pretty hard to sew, so I switched over then to using actual other pieces of leather that I cut out of another glove, and then I ran fish line down through them so that they would act like individual tendons. So if you pull on the tendon, it pulls the finger down to hold. When I do all three of them at once, it actually doesn't work quite as perfectly as I'd hope, because it does still bowstring a little bit when the glove lifts. So the idea would be that you'd have on this far end some sort of a knot or a hook and maybe a cuff across the wrist with Velcro, and you'd attach Velcro onto these laces and you'd be able to pull the Velcro back. And if you don't have the individual finger strength, you could put a D-ring on there and use the D-ring so that you're using the strength of something else to pull back. But to give an idea of how much flexion it gives, it pulls down about that far, and that was small enough to hold a small fish rod that I had. The other thing is that all of the grip in a hand comes from this side of it, so you can actually leave this finger free in case there's any kind of dexterity needs that are needed there. So that pulls down. So that was the first concept that I had, but it's not the only idea. The next idea I'll explain in just a moment here. Okay, so the second concept would be to take a Velcro D-ring, and the D-ring would hook about here on the glove like that, and then on the back side of the glove you would have this Velcro piece hooked on to itself like so that it comes over the finger. But what you do is you would take two of these so that they're side by side, and it still wouldn't be enough to flex all three fingers, but you'd sew these to the back of the glove, and unfortunately I just don't have time to sew up another mock-up of this. And then you'd have them sewed also to another piece of leather or vinyl to distribute the pressure across all three fingers, so that individual finger's still free like in the first design. And you have these two, and what happens is when you have this Velcro piece, so that when it pulls back onto itself like so, that will actually, because the D-ring will be connected here, it will pull the fingers down, and that will hold them down in that position. That Velcro piece straps on the back to itself up here. The other possibility, and this is something that we used in therapy for people who couldn't bend their fingers, it kind of gave them a long stretch, is that you put an eyelet in the top end and through the bottom end of each finger, and you put a rubber band, or it could be fish line, that it increases strength through each of the put an eyelet on each of these three fingers, and then that eyelet would have the rubber band, and it would pull down this way, and you have a hook right here. And if you had that hook right there, you could just hook the rubber band or the fish line onto that eyelet so that it pulls down, and that would also hold it. That actually gives you a little bit of a tighter grip onto there. The other possibility that you could use to expand that, if we're going to be having progressive weakness, is you could have a cuff on the forearm, and if that cuff were made out of a piece of leather, where this came down and clipped onto it, that would help as well. But then if you needed to, you could later add a splint into the hand that would actually hold the hand back, and that could be connected to the cuff itself, so that you add strength to that, so even in the future if you start to lose even more wrist strength, that you can still pull it down. So I'm not sure if that makes any sense. In my mind it makes great sense, but without the visuals, not exactly. But so an eyelet would be here, connected to a rubber band or a fish line that would pull down this way, connect onto the leather cuff. If weakness came further on down the line, you could connect a piece of metal splint material, so just rivet it onto the leather, and it would also go into the hand, and then you just add a strap across there to hold that on, so that would still stabilize the hand, which would allow continued use of the flexion mitt. So those are kind of three ideas that I had. I don't necessarily know that I like the that this idea didn't work out quite as well as I thought, because it just doesn't pull down all the way, but it would be enough maybe to assist. But I don't know that that's the best long-term solution. I think that the one where we have the straps that pull down, because they will actually put you into a full down position, or the second one where you have the rubber bands that pull down. The advantage of the rubber bands pulling down is that it's easier to put off and on. So you can let me know what you think on that issue.